Siri is laughably bad, and Apple Intelligence, it was never much better. For years, everyone knows that Siri just hasn't been very good, but luckily for Apple, Google, they might have just saved them. I don't think it matters if you are Android or Apple, but as a tech fan, it's always pretty interesting to see what is up at WWDC. And since Google I/O and the Android show showed us what is to come with Android 17 in Gemini, and today was Apple's turn to try and impress with how they plan to fix the pretty broken iOS 26. And back in January, Apple had kind of admitted that Apple Intelligence didn't really work, and that going forward, we were going to see a smarter Siri, and that smarter Siri was all going to be powered by Gemini. So it's no surprise today that a lot of what we saw on this new Apple Intelligence and new Siri is things that have been taken from Gemini and have been given a bit of an iOS reskin. And I couldn't help myself. I wanted to get this downloaded onto my iPhone and just see what iOS 27 was all about. And this is not an Apple hate video, and I'm going to judge it fairly. Like, I know iOS 27 is in its beta phase, but I just wanted to see how it could compete with Gemini on Android. And so far from what I've seen, there are some cool things in iOS 27, and other things are just Gemini features with a different name. We've heard personal context flying around for ages, from Google I/O to today's WWDC. And let me start with something which is a pretty big copy here from Google, and it's the fact that you can get something very similar to Magic Queue in the phone app now on the iPhone. So Siri is now able to pull your booking information from emails or maybe confirmation codes from text messages whilst you're on the phone. And honestly, on my Pixel, I've kind of liked this. And you'll notice through this video, if you're an Android user, that a lot of these features have been copied and pasted from Gemini to iPhones. But if you're an Apple user, you've probably never seen half of these things before. Take this for example. I can say to Gemini, can you find out the name of my hotel that I'm using for my holiday next week from my emails?
Based on your emails, the hotel you are staying at next week is the Hilton Garden Inn.
So that's where I'm going to go next week. And Gemini was able to go through my emails and have a look at that through Workspace and tell me exactly where that is, the dates I was going to, and the exact location. This is something that new Siri is going to be able to do as well. You're going to be able to go into Workspace and find out some of that information. And honestly, it's actually very good, especially if you've never used it. There's something very similar for photos as well. So I can say to Gemini, if you can find all the pictures in my gallery of dogs, and then it will bring up all those pictures of the dogs. But then I want to be a little bit more specific. So for example, I would say, okay, those photos, I just want to see the photos of dogs that are outside. And then Gemini will go straight back into that gallery and only pick those photos of where I see dogs outside. And that's kind of where it only goes with Gemini. But with the iPhone and iOS 27, I really like the fact that what you can do is then say to Siri, okay, put those photos of the dogs into the album Doggos Outside. And it can do that for you, because at the moment on Gemini, you can't do that. You can only search for those photos and then be a little bit more specific, but then you can't really do anything with those photos. Something else that I saw at the keynote, which we've had on Android for a while now with Gemini, is being able to use what's on your screen and ask the assistant questions based on that. For example, I have this picture and I want to know exactly where this is. If I ask Gemini, it will tell me exactly where it is, exactly what street it is, and then I can ask it for directions. The addition that I like though on iOS 27 is the fact that you're able to do a little bit more. So you can say, okay, find me directions to that street, but you can also then say, my friend moved to Manchester a couple of weeks ago, you know they sent you the address, and you can get that as like a stop on your way to that street. And that's something you can't do on Gemini yet, so I'm a little bit jealous of that one. If you're someone that's only using iPhone for quite a while, and all these features, you're going to be looking at these thinking, wow, they're pretty groundbreaking. I've never seen these anywhere before. But you can pick up any Android phone and pretty much do all of this with Gemini. So this is only possible on an iPhone and iOS 27 thanks to Apple's partnership with Gemini. So this is something which is quite exciting for the Apple ecosystem, the Apple world. But on Android, we've been living this life for years. I want to talk about that new Siri app a little bit, because at WWDC, Apple made this look revolutionary, like we've never seen this before, but I just feel like this is the Gemini app. Apple made such a big thing about starting chats on one device and continue it on another, but this is nothing new. I can move between my Mac and my Pixel now and continue that conversation with Gemini. Like, this has been the case for a couple of years. Something that we didn't see Apple introduce though, which I was really thinking we would see, is like a Gemini Live experience. So what you can't do yet with the new Siri is you can't just open up the app and have like one of those live conversations with it. I use this all the time with Gemini Live. Like for any questions. I think I use Gemini Live maybe like 10 times a day and talk to it about anything, but Apple for some reason haven't added this into iOS 27. Maybe this is just a feature that Apple is going to introduce to the iPhones later on in the year, but I'm surprised we didn't see this. There is something that I'm very jealous of though with that new Siri app, and have you heard the voices with Siri? They sound very good. I'm still on the waiting list in iOS 27 for the new Siri, so I can't show you exactly what those voices sound like, but we did hear it at the keynote, so have a little listen to how realistic this sounds.
Jaws said, "Team, these apricots are peak."
I love the way you can customize those voices on the new Siri. So like you can change how quickly it speaks to you, or you can change how expressive it is. And one of my biggest complaints is that I just do not like the voices on Gemini. Like the Gemini Live voice is a little bit breathy and weird, and the choices you can get are all a little bit robotic. Like they're not that human-like, which is something that I think you want. But that new Siri voice and the way you can edit it, I'm a little bit jealous of this. I feel like Google could add this as an update for Gemini on Android because, of course, remember the baseline for the new Siri is Gemini, and I really hope they do add this in because the voices with the Gemini on Android, it's not great. Photography is where Apple spent a lot of time talking about Apple Intelligence and what it can now do and how groundbreaking it is, but all I could hear as they were talking about this is that iOS 27 has finally caught up to Android. What I thought was funny is that Apple said it had a deep respect for the craft of photography, and then it was like, yeah, you can just make the photos into literally anything you want, no matter how silly. And I am excited to try the updated AI stuff like the cleanup tool on iOS 27 because, to be honest, with iOS 26, the cleanup tool and that eraser stuff, it really was not very good. And it's a shame that I'm not able to try it right now because I'm still on that waiting list, and on the beta, not everything is working as expected, so it's a little bit irritating. But yeah, going forward, I'm just excited to see what Apple have actually done here. The expand background thing inside the Photos app is also quite cool because it saves you the job of having to go into Gemini, and I just really like that you're able to change the aspect ratio inside the app and then have it generate that background for you. You can do something similar with Galaxy AI, but it just does not look as good as it does on iOS 27. There was also that introduction of being able to change your photos into different types of styles, which we saw at the Android show and Google I/O. So again, this is something else that has just been borrowed from Gemini. Let me just give Apple credit here because that new reframing tool is very good. Granted, this is kind of taking the R out of a photo. It's making you think less about what you need to do because you can just reframe it after. But I do kind of like it. It's something that we haven't seen Gemini do on Android phones just yet, and I think this will probably come to like the Pixel 11s or the Galaxy S27 Ultras and the S27 series in like a couple of months time. But right now, this is something that I wish that we had, which iPhones they do have, and it's very cool. Talking of those new Apple Intelligence features, which I'm a little bit jealous of, there are a few on the iPhone which I wish we had on Android. I already mentioned the customization of the Siri voice. I really like that, so I do hope that Google brings this to a Gemini update at some point. I think being able to ask Siri just to create you shortcuts with natural language is very cool, like creating a routine when you leave a certain location. That's pretty sick. And I do wish that Gemini could integrate with messages a little bit more seamlessly. I like the fact that Siri AI can get that context from messages, which is something we can't do yet on Android. Having said that, there are a few features that Gemini has been able to do for ages. Firstly, visual intelligence is kind of just Google Lens. Getting nutritional information from just a picture, we've been able to do that for a while. And creating AI wallpapers, it might sound cool at first, but we've had it so long, I don't know anyone that uses that. I am really surprised that Apple didn't add something like Circle to Search to iOS 27 because I stand by the fact that I think Circle to Search is like the greatest AI feature that we've had in a long time. I use this like daily, so I'm just surprised that we didn't see something similar on the iOS 27 release. Siri is just what Gemini has been for the last couple of years, and don't get me wrong, what it can do inside apps is pretty cool. But to be honest, this update is kind of just fixing Siri. We know it's being bad, and this is just what Siri should have been able to do like 5 years ago. However, there's a bit of a problem if you live inside the EU. That is that a lot of what was shown is not going to be available inside the EU or China. And some of the most advanced parts of Siri are only available on the iPhone 17 Pros and the iPhone Air. So even if you got the iPhone 17, you can't get some of those advanced Siri parts. Like, you're going to have to get yourself a brand new phone or get what the iPhone 18 is, or maybe the 18 Pro. I don't know how Apple are going to work this. And just like with Gemini, there's a daily cap on how much you can actually use unless you're going to be paying for a higher tier of Siri AI or Apple Intelligence. Like, Gemini has this already with the Gemini Ultra plans and Gemini Pro plans, so Apple is just following suit. I like a lot of those iOS 27 features that Apple has kind of borrowed from Gemini. Apple knew that Apple Intelligence was a bit of a failure. They saw what Google was doing with Gemini and thought, you know what, that's fine. Let's just take that. We'll copy and paste it and brand it in their own Apple way. But as an Android fan, what are your thoughts on Apple's implementation of this new Siri AI and Apple Intelligence working with the Gemini? I think they've done it quite well, but I think they've also missed the trick by not adding something like Circle to Search or like a Siri live chat feature. But let me know in the comments. If you can subscribe to the channel before you head off, I would massively appreciate it. And if you do that, then I'll see you in the next one.